We will call this Monday, June 24th, regular session of the Carmel Clay School Board to order. Madam Secretary, roll call, please.
All members present tonight.
Thank you. Please join the Carmel High School golf team for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next, do we have...
Mr. President, I'd
Yes,
like
ma'am.
to make a motion, please. I would like to make a motion to remove action item number 1 from the agenda and reconsider this item after the teachers have had a chance to negotiate their contract for the coming year.
Thank you. Do we have a second? There being no second, the motion fails. We will move on to presentations. The first presentation is Dr. Beresford.
Thank you, Mr. Kirshner. It's my honor to recognize Jerry Wang. Jerry, if you want to come up here. Now, Dr. Harmos and I had this great opportunity to hang out with Jerry and his family at the governor's office because Jerry was chosen as one of the 2019 Governor's STEM Team Award winners. There was only 4 students in the entire state that were chosen, and the awards highlight Indiana's elite high school students for their work in science, technology, engineering, and math. So it spells STEM. And so Jerry was the M, right? Yeah. So. And this is what the governor said. He said, Indiana is home to many talented students, and this year's pool of STEM Team Award applicants is proof of that. These 4 students represent the best and brightest of Hoosier High School students. I can't wait to see what great things they'll accomplish in the years ahead. So Jerry, along with the other 3 students, each received a $1,000 college scholarship through Indiana's College Choices 529 Direct Service Savings Plan, and that was just a little plug for that. It's a pretty good deal. And they got Letterman jackets identifying them as members of the governor's STEM team. So I've got a couple of pictures here. Colleen will put them up here. All right. I'll do a little filler while we're running auto stuff. All right. You want me to click it?
Yep.
All right. Okay, I got you. All right. So this is Jerry on the end down here with. There we go. Got to try to make it look nice. So you can see you got the big check, which is always kind of cool. He's got the really cool letter jacket, which I thought was a lot of fun, and the governor, they were having a lot of fun with it. So then you get a little closer. This is a picture of the governor saying really cool stuff about Jerry, and it was pretty impressive. I'm going to read you some of it here in a minute. And then this is the solo shot with the governor. So Jerry hanging with the governor, and then of course it wouldn't be proper unless Jerry tried out his desk. So maybe a future governor here, Jerry Wang, get his autograph now kind of thing. But I'll tell you what the governor said about Jerry. He said, Jerry's a junior at Carmel High School, and he earned a perfect score on the ACT Math, the SAT Math, SAT 2 Math Level 2, SAT 2 Physics, and SAT 2 Chemistry exams. He's been in the top 3% of his class all throughout high school. But his interest in math and science solidified as an elementary student when he put his interest in math and science when he completed an independent study on black holes. So there you go, right out of the gate. You're after it right there. Jerry's an active participant in Mathematical Association of America, American Mathematics Competition, where he's been recognized on their Distinguished Honor Roll. He qualified to participate in the National American Invitational Mathematical Examination. He participated in the Rose-Hulman High School Mathematics Competition, where his team placed first, and he placed third in the Midwest regional level. Jerry's also a leading team member of his school's teams in the American Association of Physics Teachers Physics Bowl, Washington University's Chemistry Tournament, and the U.S. Air Force Association's Cyber Patriot 11 competition. That's cybersecurity, right? Yeah. Jerry began research through IUPUI to understand the visual analytics to the placement of 3D facial landmarks. Now, I've often thought about that myself. I just always, do that. And then he's developed a technique and a software tool for the automatic placement of biological landmarks on any given 3D face image. So obviously we got a super bright guy here, and then also you're on Tech Hounds, right? Yeah. And he rewrote he made the backup motherboard, right, for the robot this year. Jerry's future career goals are in the fields of computer science and electrical engineering. So we couldn't be prouder of Jerry Wang for being chosen by the governor in the state, representing Carmel High School and Carmel Clay Schools at such a high level. So one more time, let's give it up for Jerry Wang. We're now going to do the photo op.
You guys want to get in? Yeah.
No, you're fine. All right, before we have our next presentation, I don't want to slight the girls lacrosse team, but the boys were here standing together, so they got the honor and the pressure of doing the pledge. So when you guys win next year, when you girls win next year, we'll ask you to do the pledge.
I don't think there'd be any discussion about trying to tell the difference between Jerry's transcript and my transcript. You'd be able to take the names off of those and still put them right back. So at this time, I'd like to have members of our girls lacrosse team come forward. The girls lacrosse team had a remarkable season again this year, playing one of the toughest schedules in the state. They take on all comers from the Midwest, and they were a lot of fun to watch all year. Some nights more fun than other nights. And throughout the state tournament, they asserted themselves as one of the top teams in the state, making the Final Four and defeating Evansville North on Friday night about 3 weeks ago, and then coming from behind from an early deficit to really put on a show at the state finals at Hamilton Southeastern, beating Brebeuf for the state championship. And while the girls lacrosse program has been around for many years, as you know, this is the second year that the team has been a varsity sport at Carmel High School, and they've just been a great addition to our school and our athletic department, and we're thrilled to have them as a part of it in every way. So this time I'm going to have their first-year head coach, Josh Miller, come up to say a few words about the team and introduce those team members who are here this evening.
Thank you for including us. We're happy to be here. Hopefully we can continue this again next year and do the pledge as well. So we look forward to that. We had a number of seniors this year on the team, but we're thrilled that these individuals were able to make it tonight. On the end here, and I'll just go from my right to left, is Macy Johnson. These are all seniors, all headed off to a number of different places, and a few are going on to play. Macy, again, a senior. Next to her is Anna Hartman, our goalie. Elise Pickering, Mary Rose Ramsey, who has a younger sister who, again, will be standing here next year with us when she's a senior, and then Maddie Dumke, a four-year starter for us. So we're thrilled. Thank you for your support. We certainly appreciate the support of Mr. Inskeep and Dr. Harmus showing up to the games and being out there in sometimes some pretty miserable weather conditions, and yet they show up, and we certainly appreciate everything that they've done for us. So thank you.
You coming up?
We have a kind of a late change in our agenda because Lauren and Leela are participating in a tennis tournament today, and as you may have heard, we've had a lot of rain this month, so their tennis tournament schedule got pushed back today, and they're unable to be with us tonight, so hopefully we'll have them back at a later date to recognize their double state championship. Our next group to be recognized is our boys golf team. I will have members of the team and their coaching staff come forward at this time. The boys golf team faced a lot of pressure this year, and last year they had a very dramatic win for a state championship, which ended a 28-year drought for the program and state championships, and just a real pressure-filled day a year ago. But with being the state champions and returning a lot of those key members from last year, I think was a lot of pressure on them to match in and match out, to stick up as the number one team in the state, which they held the entire season. And throughout the tournament, I think they learned a lot about pressure as well this year. And in the sectional tournament, they faced their first defeat of the year, finishing in second place to Zionsville at the sectional, but turned right around with an impressive 29-stroke win at the regional, and then at the state finals a couple weeks ago at Prairie View, really put on a show. And as they came down the stretch, senior Nick Dentino, facing a lot of pressure as well, emerged as the individual state champion, winning on the first playoff hole against his closest competitor. So it was a very exciting season, very exciting state finals. It did not go down to the last hole this year. And I'm going to have our head coach, Chard Reed, come forward to say a few things about the team and introduce the team members who are here this evening. Chard.
Thanks. Thanks to the board for having us, and we really appreciate it. We have several team members who were unable to come tonight due to other competitions that they're in, qualifying for the U.S. Junior Amateur, kind of a national tournament. So it's a big deal for them to be part of that, and they apologize for not being here. But we have three of our leaders this year. Nick Dentino, closest to me, is a senior, graduating. He's going to be playing at Purdue next year. And as Mr. Inskeep said, he was the individual state champion this year, as well as the Mental Attitude Award winner for the state, which is a really big deal. And since I've been around, I haven't ever seen somebody win the Mental Attitude Award plus be an individual state champion and a team champion. And they kind of joked it was a new title, the trifecta at the state finals. So that was really good. And Nick's been an instrumental leader for our program for the last 4 years. Next, we have Jack Crawford, senior. And Jack is going to be going to Hope College. And Jack really emerged as a leader on our team this year. One of my favorite stories of my whole coaching career is, Jack honestly did not get any varsity time his first 3 years and kept persevering, kept working hard, and over the summer last year really just hit his stride. And he actually had our second best scoring average on the whole team this year, and was the Greyhound Award winner for our team. So great job to you too, Jack. And then finally, Clay Steersman's a junior, going to be a senior this year. And Clay is going to Wake Forest. And among other things, Clay shot a 64 this year at Uland. That's pretty good. I know I've shot that for 9 before. But very impressive day, 6 under par, and just lights out. And he had a few other tournaments that he won. All 3 of these gentlemen were also selected to be on the all-state team along with junior Luke Prawl, who's not here tonight. So that was also a really big accomplishment for this team to have 4 of the 5 guys on the team part of the all-state team, which is usually 2 is a lot. So really great season, really proud of these guys, and of course Coach Neild has just been a constant source of encouragement and support for the boys. Last summer, when Nick and Cole made it to the U.S. Amateur, I mean, Coach Neild flew out to Pebble Beach to watch them. He travels all around during the summer supporting the boys, and we're really lucky to have someone like Coach Neild on this team as well, supporting the team even in the off season. So great job, guys. Proud of you guys, and thank you to Dr. Beresford and Mr. Inskeep for coming out to state and supporting us.
All right, we normally take a pause here to allow those that have homework to go do homework, but there's no homework, but we understand and we will not be offended if you leave us for the rest of the meeting, but you're welcome to stay. Next on the agenda is public comment. I assume we have Bob. Next on the agenda is public comment. There's no one that would like to speak, so we will move to consent. On the consent agenda this evening are the personnel report, payroll, approval of gift applications, including gifts to Town Meadow, Woodbrook, Creekside Middle School, Carmel Clay School Special Services Department, and some gifts from various PTOs to support the 2019 C4 conference. May I have a motion to approve consent, please? A second? Is there any discussion? No, we'll now vote. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. There being none, consent, the motion for consent now carries. I do understand that we have some recognition for a new administrator from Orchard Park. I will turn it over to Dr. Beresford.
And I will introduce Rhonda Turner, principal at Orchard Park Elementary, and she's going to introduce her new, brand spanking new assistant principal.
So I can't play golf, and there's no way that I will ever get a perfect score on the ACT or the SAT, but I do pride myself in surrounding myself by really smart, innovative, creative, but humble people. She does not like to be the center of attention. And so I will introduce the new assistant principal here in just a second, but I just want to talk about her for a minute. She is a Carmel grad and a Purdue grad. She student taught actually under Jennifer Shuhai, who's the principal at West Clay, but she was actually discovered by our very own Dr. Dudley as a teacher. So Dr. Dudley hired her first as a teacher. And as a teacher, she was constantly always wanting to be a leader, wanting to grow as an educator. She became a technology coordinator while she was a teacher. She was the webmaster. She was the lead teacher. Goes on and on and on. Then in 2015, when we were fortunate enough to have instructional coaches in all of the elementary buildings, she became the instructional coach at Orchard Park and was working alongside teachers, having them grow and helping them to be better educators. And then this position opened up at Orchard Park, and along with well over 100 other applicants, this person applied for the position and out-interviewed and everybody. She was so very qualified for the position. So I'm so honored to introduce Mrs. Kelly Flager as the new assistant principal at Orchard Park Elementary. She is going to do an amazing job. So congratulations, Kelly. I'm really happy to have you. I'm sure you want to shake her hand, right? Yeah. And I told her she had to do her fight song, and she had to have a speech ready, but she does not. All right.
Next on the agenda, we move to action. The first action item is non-bargaining group salary adjustments for 2019 and 2020, and 2020 and 2021. Mr. McMichael, please provide an explanation of this matter.
Thank you. We're making a recommendation for 2 years, 2019 and 2020, and then 2020 and 2021. And so first, for administrators, department chairs, student service coordinators, OTs and PTs and nurses, these are all of our salaried employees that are not covered under the collective bargaining agreement. And in the first year for 1920, we're recommending a 4% salary increase to all salary schedules plus increment, a 1% base salary stipend for employees that are rated effective or highly effective. And then there's a third item with regard to the benefit Schedule E, which includes all administrators. And we're recommending that you add the superintendent to the list of employees who can sell back unused vacation days up to 10 days per year. Currently, that list includes the associate superintendent, the assistant superintendent, and the Carmel High School principal. And since that is something that is not in Dr. Beresford's individual contract, we're recommending that it be included in the administrator benefit package, as it is not in his individual contract. In the second year for 2021, recommending it for these same employees, recommending a 2% increase in all salary schedules plus increment, and a 1% base salary stipend for employees rated effective or highly effective. Then with regard to support staff, in 2019 and 2020, recommending a 2.5% increase to all salary schedules plus increment, and then in 2021, recommending a 2% increase to all salary schedules plus increment. This year, we feel that with the funding provided by the state, and as well as our anticipated increase that we will get with our local referendum, we feel that we can afford these salary increases. Might also point out that the differentiation between the salaried staff and the support staff is a result of the action taken by the legislature and the governor this year, which reduced the contribution for teachers' retirement fund from 7.5% to 5.5%. Excuse me. So that is providing essentially more. Is freeing up money to provide increases for those employees covered under that retirement program. It did not reduce the public employees retirement fund, which is the fund that provides retirement for support staff. And with that, I'd respond to questions that you might have.
Thank you. Before we move to discussion, may I have a motion to approve the action item, which is the recommendation for non-bargaining group salary adjustments for 2019-2020, and then also for 2020-2021.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Katie?
Can you explain to me the reasoning behind the timing?
Yes. Most of these employees are on a July 1 to June 30th schedule. And so in order to provide their increases on a timely basis, we're making this recommendation now because it would then be effective July 1st, and it would, one, it would provide their increases timely, and secondly, it would not result in retroactive pay, which is an additional burden really on our finance department to calculate that. But the primary reason is that we feel that employees should have their increase in a timely manner when that's at all possible. Unfortunately, with teachers, by the way, it's not possible because the state legislature does not permit us to begin formal collective bargaining until September the 15th, and that really was based on the student count day because at that point, as you know, our funding is to a great extent driven by our enrollment, and so I believe the thinking is that we'll wait till count day and have better insight as to what the formula will bring. But in doing that, it results in, it's guaranteed that we're going to have retro pay for teachers and that we cannot give their increase timely because of that legislation.
And even though some of these, if not a majority, are former teachers, they're held under this and not the bargaining unit.
Correct. These employees are not covered under the collective bargaining unit. Most of them first have a teaching contract, and they are teachers that then went on to either get into administration or department chair. That's not the case with the student service coordinators, for example, but we feel that it would not be appropriate to separate them out because these are also all of our salaried employees that are non-teachers, or at least I shouldn't say non-teachers, they really are teachers, but they're not covered under the collective bargaining agreement. And like teachers, though, they're salaried employees and exempt from wage and hour laws.
Thank you.
Lynn, no. Layla?
Yes. Couple questions. First, can you explain again the difference between turf or what the legislature paid 2% on as compared to the public employee retirement fund?
Yes, this really started with the governor, who announced that it was his intent to provide funding for teachers' retirement fund that would reduce the employer's contribution from 7.5% to 5.5%. And so he was very specific that was he was focused on doing anything that he could do to increase teachers' salaries. And so the legislature then supported that and ultimately approved that reduction. Now, that's being provided by the state for the next 2 years, but then the projection is that the need in that fund in the third year and going forward to fund the retirement will be such that the 5.5%, they'll be able to maintain that. And so, and that was important because typically if you're talking about salaries, those are recurring expenses, so you need recurring revenue. And so that was very important. Now, the other retirement program for the state of Indiana for support staff is Public Employees Retirement Fund, or PERF. And there was no reduction in that contribution that we make as the employer. I might add one other thing, in that the state legislature did say that they did not require that reduction to be directed specifically at teachers. But clearly, in my mind, that was the intent. And so, but they also said that they did not want to kind of interfere with local control. I can tell you from previous experience, though, that when local boards disregard, the intent of the state legislature, it's not uncommon that, in upcoming years that they will then mandate what their intent is, which is what they did with the differentiation for bonuses between highly effective and effective staff.
Okay, I have another question, and I know we've looked at numbers, but I just wanted to clarify. This seems very generous, the 4% for everybody. And I want to be sure that we aren't using all the money that we have. So from what you've shared with us in all of the data of new money, in doing this, we will still have, at a minimum, funds to collectively, in good faith, collectively bargain with our teacher group to have as generous, if not more, for, depending on how the bargaining goes, but we have a pot of funds, new money.
Yes, and I want to emphasize that it's certainly not our intent to, in any way predetermine, the bargaining process. At the same time, the reality is that we know that we have a certain amount of additional money, and so we have done projections. I've done projections as to the cost of the current teacher contract. And again, that in the bargaining process, that may change. We could agree to change the schedule and do all kinds of things. But as far as the amount of funds that are available, we did not in any way make a recommendation here that would disadvantage our teachers.
Okay.
Pam?
Yes. It is my intent to vote no to this action item because I think we need to make the teacher contract our priority this year. The legislature added additional money to the budget for education for the next biennium so that corporations could negotiate in good faith to raise teacher salaries across the state. If we address the non-bargaining groups first, it gives the impression that the teachers are to bargain with the money that is left. I don't think that was the intent of the last legislative session. It is a misconception that because the Carmel schools are located in one of the wealthiest areas, that the teachers are among the highest paid in the state. We have been able to give the teachers raises for the last couple of years, but only work with the money we receive from the state. That funding has placed Carmel near the bottom of money received from the funding formula. I am very proud to say that Carmel Clay Schools is one of the best school districts in Indiana, and I want us to be able to attract and retain the best teachers for our students, not lose them to other districts. In the June 6, 2018 article in the Indy Star, Adam Baker, a spokesman for IDOE, said, "Adjusted for inflation, the state has seen educator salaries decrease by 15% over the past 15 years." In another article from February 13, 2019, the Indy Star stated a beginning set teacher in Carmel, but it was based on the 2016-17 school year, the salary of $36,791.70 ranked 107th in the state, with Carmel's maximum salary of $78,338 ranking 30th in the state. The current range is $37,545 for a beginning teacher, up to $82,297 for a teacher who has a doctorate. Zionsville, Brownsburg, Hamilton Southeastern, Westfield, and Noblesville all list beginning salaries higher than Carmel. We need to be competitive with these districts. So now let's take this opportunity to bargain with the teachers prior to giving consideration to the other employee groups. And if we need to make the pay retroactive for all employee groups when bargaining is done, then we will do so. I would also like to add that there is an informal bargaining process that can take place before formal bargaining. So if that takes place and an agreement could be reached prior to formal bargaining, then when formal bargaining begins in September, that can be finished. Thank you.
Yes, Layla.
Pam, you had mentioned the rates, the compensation for the other school districts. Do you have a full package of their other fringe benefits?
The salaries that they have are not without benefits, and Zionsville this year, 2018 contract, they're making $42,000, top salary of $88,000. Step 10 is between $60,000 and $62,000. Plus, they get a one-time salary increase based on the year hired. Hamilton Southeastern, January 2018, they have a beginning salary of $40,158, and their maximum salary is $78,074. And then they start again in January, so they must go from January to January. And so in January 2019, their beginning salary was the same, but their top salary was $78,751, which is less than what we have as a doctorate. Westfield, their 2017 to 19 contract, beginning salary is $38,750, and they go up to $86,650.
Okay. But we don't have any other benefits, like the total package? This is just based on salary?
Well, yeah.
Okay.
So's ours.
Roger, can you confirm salary rates for Carmel Clay Schools?
By confirm,
What this year's beginning salary and peak salary is?
I can. I mean, I don't have that off the top of my head.
It's on the website. That's where I
It
have
is on the website.
Okay.
I would say that there's been a lot of changes in salary schedules because of the change in legislation. Increasingly, school districts are finding that they are not able to maintain the traditional step lane schedule with multiple lanes for varying degrees. Carmel, for example, has a lane for bachelor's in 15, a bachelor in 30, masters in 15, masters in 30, and it goes all the way over to the doctorate. Secondly, our salary schedule, you get to the top of our salary schedule in our master's column and over in 18 years, and you get to the top of the bachelor's column, and I believe in 15 years. Noblesville, for example, it takes about 35 to 40 years to get to the top of their schedule.
Not on their schedule.
I'm sorry?
It wasn't on their schedule.
So, so there's there's more to the salary schedule than the beginning salary and the top salary. Depends on, because obviously if our top were less, but you got there sooner in your career, that begins to make up for somebody that would take longer to get to the top. So traditionally, we look at, I look at salary schedules and what's referred to as lifetime earnings. So if you take somebody on our salary schedule and assume that they teach their entire career here, 30, 35, 40 years, whatever, because there's so much, I'll say manipulation for lack of a better term, and I don't mean that really in a negative way, but because it depends on the district. But if they're trying to increase the top of their schedule, or more likely these days increase the beginning schedule, there's still no more money. So what happens is if you have a higher starting salary, by necessity, you will have to slow that down as you go through the years. So it's not uncommon, for example, that we compare ourselves to somebody that starts higher, but by year 3 or 4, our schedule's higher. And it continues to get higher after that. And so there's a spread that takes place. Now, not to take anything away from any of the districts that Pam referred to, because they are very well-paying districts, and several of them districts that we do compete with. But in the past, as we've looked at our career earnings, we're very competitive. We would like to raise our beginning salary, and this will do that with the amount of money that is that we have. And so, again, it depends on what the priorities are that come out of the bargaining process. It may be beginning salary, or it may be at the top of the schedule. Oftentimes it's both, and that can make it difficult because, again, there's only so much money. I should make one clarification, Pam, and that is that in the last biennium, Carmel actually received the most money in the increase in the state. Now, that's because we were also the lowest funded in the state. So, but we've been fortunate the last few years, I believe, with the formula, because it has advanced us more as a percentage more than really most other school districts. But again, it starts because we were also the lowest funded. So,
Katie?
Can you tell me historically how, I haven't been here that long, so how does it usually work? Do we do non-bargaining and then bargaining? Is that historically how it's always been done, or is this?
This is not new for a number of years. I don't know exactly how many, but I'm going to say, yeah, it goes probably back 6 or 7 years or so. We did a couple things. One is we changed our support staff to put them on a July 1, June 30th schedule rather than a January 1, December 31st schedule. So when they were on a January schedule, then their raises weren't due until January, obviously, instead of July. So we started doing the non-teachers several years ago, and prior to that, it was typical that we waited until bargaining was over, but bargaining, there was not statutory requirement that you couldn't start bargaining until the middle of September. When you start in the middle of September, potentially we will not be finished with the process until November. If we're fortunate and things go well through the process, and by well, I don't mean just that we get along, but I mean sometimes there's complications trying to for example, they've changed things to where we had to make modifications to our salary schedule in order to be compliant with the state requirements. And so certain things take a certain amount of time. And so as we go through that process, and now this year, this biennium, there's been additional legislation which requires 2 public hearings, one before the process starts and one after a tentative agreement is reached. And those require advertising 3 days prior to the hearing. And then after the hearing, you can't act as a board until 3 days after the hearing. So that stretches in total about 6 days. So the current status is different than it was years ago in terms of that timing requirement.
Any other questions? Pam?
Yes, I would just like to bring up again that we have had teacher strikes, we've had teacher discussion across the country. Our state tried to make teachers a priority this year in their legislative process. They expected school systems to do the same, and so I'm asking the school system to do that and make the teachers the priority this year and not the other bargaining groups.
I would like to comment.
Go ahead, Leila.
Yes, thank you. I would like to comment that I think our teachers are a priority, and I think everybody sitting up here values our teachers, and they are a priority to all of us. And taking action does not indicate whether we consider our teachers a priority, in my opinion.
Any other comments? Dr. Beresford, any comments?
I'll just say, first off, this is never easy, and having negotiated a lot of different contracts and both non-certified and certified staff over a number of years, it's always a tenuous situation. But we always have to look at what's good for the team, and in this situation, I'm used to, and other negotiations I've gone through, that everybody on the team, non-certified and certified staff, get the same percentage of raise. Now, this year's a little unique because the governor and the legislature made a move specifically for certified staff. And by doing that, they set a savings for the districts around, and all the other districts around are wrestling with this issue as well, because it's a little abnormal from what we would usually do. But in this situation, essentially everyone is getting the same raise. There's a 2.5% the first year and a 2% the second year. The only exception to that is the certificated staff, which are getting that savings applied directly to theirs. So that's why you see that 4% instead of a 2.5%. So obviously, my opinion, and in working with Roger and looking at the whole, I think it's a very balanced approach. And I think it values all of our employees. And our teachers are getting a little extra love this year because they got a little extra love from the state. And I'm real happy about that. And I tell you, at the end of the day, I would not be surprised after negotiations conclude that this may be the biggest raise our teachers have gotten in probably the last 5-10 years, maybe.
10.
And Roger says 10, so I was going a little conservative there. This is kind of weird for me to be conservative and for Roger to not to be. It's usually the other way around. The other thing I'll let you know is that also this includes increment. So new teachers and teachers at the bottom of the scale, when they get their increment, their step for being highly effective or effective, that could amount at the bottom of the scale 8%, 9%.
Yes, it's a dollar amount, so it's right at $2,000. So if you're making $40,000, it's the same $2,000 if you're making $70,000. So the percentage, of course, is higher at the low end of the salary schedules compared to the top.
Right, and if you're at the very top or near the top, not at the top, then that's going to be
2.5 or so.
2.5% or so on top of the 4% that we're projecting. Now, if you're at the top, there is no more steps, so you don't have an increment to go to, so you'll only get the 4%. So anyhow, and looking at the whole picture and the whole pie, I think Roger's done a great job piecing this together, and I think it will be once the contract is negotiated and settled, I think it'll be something that's fair and is going to be one of the biggest raises they've had in Carmel Clay School's history here in a while. So I'm pretty pleased about that. And I also would like to take this moment just to say how wonderful it is to work with the Carmel's Teachers Association. They are fantastic. The leadership there is fantastic. And, they are for Carmel Clay Schools and not just, the teaching staff, but for everybody on the team. And I think that they should be commended. I've only been here a year, but it's been wonderful. And so I'd want to do a shout out to them as well. So I hope that's helpful to the conversation.
Thank you. And I just want to clarify that we've talked about these percentages, and then in addition to the percentages, we've talked about plus increment, which is the steps, and then in the first year, we've also got stipend if they're effective or highly effective. And then I'm just looking at the proposal for the second year, that percentage is not there. The 1%, is that because we don't know what that percentage is going to be, or should that number be there in the second year?
It is there. It's 1% the first year and 1% in the second year. So there's no increase in the second year. It's the same amount, same 1% as the first year, which is a little bit more than the last 2 years. The bonus that you referred to for staff from the state for teachers increased from, I think, $30 million over for the state to 39, I think, or 37. So it ticked up a bit, and that will add a little to the certified staff as well.
Thank you. Pam?
Dr. Beresford, did you just say that the 4% salary increase includes the TURF, the TRF money?
I'm sorry, what your question again?
The 4%, you said the increase is really 2.5% or 2% plus the 2%
Actually,
TRF money?
I think it's 1.5%.
No, it's 2.
It's 2. As far as that, we haven't got a 4% for, for the teachers, because that has to be negotiated.
No, I'm saying
as far as
here.
what's on here,
Yeah.
I'll defer to Roger a little bit on that one.
So
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Yeah,
So the people on, you've got administrators,
Yeah.
department chairs, student service coordinators, OT, PT, and nurses. Do all of those individuals pay into TRF?
They all do, except the student service coordinators and
OT and PT don't? Yes,
correct.
they do?
Except for student service coordinators, OTs, PTs, and nurses.
So will they be receiving the TRF money?
They will not, it's not that they're receiving the TRF money, they're included in this group, and we chose to recommend them and include them in this group because they are part of our professional staff. They're salaried and exempt employees, and there's relatively few in number, and we felt that to exclude them from and treating them differently than our other professional staff is not something that we would recommend. Our nurses, for example, I think we have 6 nurses left, and student service coordinators we have about 20. So it's not large numbers, it's not large amounts of money, but they work hand in hand with our other professional staff, and so we did include those.
And that's not uncommon, because you do get, I call them tweeners, that are they're salaried positions, so they're not like the support staff, and then they're not in the teachers, at the teacher level, so they're kind of in between, but they are part of our exempt staff, which is salaried staff, and that's why you choose to include them, and that's what the part of this recommendation is, that they were chosen to be included.
Any other questions or discussion? So I guess I just want to clarify. So the governor and the legislators basically agreed to take a responsibility off of our payroll, off of our budget, and that the recommendation is that that's how come we are treating the two groups different in the first year.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. So there being no more questions or discussions, all in favor of adopting the recommendation as presented by Mr. Mike McMichael, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? No. The motion carries with 1 not in favor of the recommendation. Next, we will move to some policy adoptions. Dr. Dudley, please provide an explanation.
Thank you. So this evening, I have two policies to bring before the board for a second reading. The first policy is policy 4111.01, and it is the homeless students policy. This policy, the changes in this policy came about by recommendations from ISBA due to ESSA's amendments and changes in the McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act. And as you'll notice in the policy, as I brought this last month for a discussion, you'll notice that the policy seems to delete a major part of the information. All of that information will then be put into our administrative guidelines, because really, as the policy committee looked at it, we need to have this policy as it's written, but then a lot of the procedural pieces really do belong in those administrative guidelines.
Thank you. Before I move to discussion, may I have a motion to approve adoption of policy 411.10?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Any discussion? Thank you. There being no discussion, we'll now vote. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? No. Motion carries. Next is another policy, adoption of policy 4112, entrance requirements. Again, Dr. Dudley.
Thank you. So this policy is due to the recent legislative changes. As you'll recall, last year the legislature changed that students that entered kindergarten and had a birthday after August 1st, we would not receive ADM funding for those students. The legislature changed that, so we changed our policy last year. The legislature changed that this year, that students who enter kindergarten and their birthday is, they're 5 by September 1st, will receive ADM funding. So this doesn't change the entrance requirement. The entrance requirement is still August 1st for the state, and then we have an early entrance process for students that parents want to admit them by September 1st. But we are changing the policy back to that September 1st date.
Thank you. Again, before discussion, may I have a motion to approve adoption of policy 4112, the entrance requirements?
So moved.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Amy, I thought I just heard you say we were going to change the policy back to September 1st. Did you mean the administrative guideline?
So our policy is, right now what our administrative guideline is we have an early entrance by September 1st. We can, if you enroll and your student enrolls in kindergarten early,
Right.
we still will get the funding.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. We'll now vote. All in favor of adopting the recommendation, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? No. Motion carries. I believe we have one more, actually, materials adoption. Dr. Dudley.
Yes, thank you. So this evening, I'm bringing to you as a recommendation for action some materials adoption items. These materials adoption include our health and wellness and interpersonal relations at the high school, our sports medicine 1 and 2 at the high school, our wellness classes at the middle school, as well as we had some changes in the curriculum for our English 9, World History, and then also Accounting 1.
Thank you. Again, before discussion, may I have a motion to approve the materials adoption recommendation? Thank you. Second. Thank you. Any discussion? There being no discussion, all in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? No. Motion carries. Next on the agenda, and I'm going to apologize for the order, since we made you guys sit through our whole action agenda item, but we will now move to the recommendation to approve the Carmel Clay Public Library Board appointment. Dr. Beresford.
Hi, we are fortunate enough to be able to appoint members to the board for the Carmel Library, and this term we are actually appointing two appointments to that board. And the first appointment will be for John Williams, our former principal of Carmel High School, and so it looks like he's getting out of retirement and getting into some work again. So we want to recommend John Williams for that appointment. And secondly, we want to recommend Patty Napier, who is the pastor at Carmel United Methodist Church and a highly respected member of our community. Reverend Napier has been on the board for 3 terms, correct? And she will be going for her 4th term, which is that's as many as you can get, I understand. And then talking with the director of the Carmel Library, Bob Sweeney, there, she's really a very important member of that board and does a lot of things with personnel and just is of great value to the board. There's been a lot of roll-off, and it's anticipating some other roll-offs. So having someone with her experience is critical to the operation. So the recommendation is that we appoint both Patty and John as our 2 representatives on the library board. Did I get all that right? All right.
Thank you, Dr. Beresford. Before we have any discussion, may I have a motion to approve the recommendation to appoint 2 members to the Carmel Clay Public Library Board?
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Yes, Katie.
I just want to say thank you. I am so thankful that there are great members of our community who are willing to volunteer their time and energy and opinions and all those great things to such a good cause. So thank you for your service.
Okay, thank you. Again, all in favor of the recommendation, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? No. Motion carries. Thank you. Next, we will move to discussion. The first item on discussion is Mr. McMichael, the Carmel Clay Schools 2021-2022 school calendar.
Thank you. So we put a committee together, which included parents, administrators, teachers, and we studied our calendar and ultimately added 1 more year. So starting here with 2018-19, you can see we began August 13th and ended May 31st. With 88 days of instruction in the first semester and 94 in the second. There were 5 major interests that the committee felt strongly about. One was to continue with 182 student day versus the minimum requirement of 180 days. Also prefer a traditional calendar. It's important to balance the first semester and the second semester. And we continue to want to end first semester before winter break, and we want to continue beginning Thanksgiving break on Wednesday. So we start there, then recognize that when you have those parameters, then that starts to drive a lot of other decisions. And so our 2019-20 calendar is basically a roll forward of 18-19. And then 2021 is as well. And so we get to the 21-22 calendar, which is the proposed calendar, and in 2021, we would begin school August the 9th. We would end winter break, or start winter break on December the 20th through January the 3rd. Continue to have, and Thanksgiving would continue to be Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday for that break. And then the last teacher contract day would be May 26th. This continues to provide for 88 days of instruction in the first semester and 94 days in the second semester. We recognize that August 9th there was some concern about that's early. But as we work through that, if we start that later, then it begins to push those other priorities, one of which is to somewhat balance the first semester with the second semester. And so what you would find is the calendar kind of backs up. And so August, when 22-23 calendar is created, it'll move forward. If it's more or less this type of a calendar, it then would have the start date more like the middle of August. But we did not find a way to meet these other priorities and start school later in this case. Yeah. Pam?
Yeah, December 20th, would that be a Monday?
December 20th, I don't know. I'd have to look.
Which means that would be, the students would get off on the 17th?
Let's see. You're saying the last day would be the 17th?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't have that calendar in front of me. You have one?
20th is a Monday?
December 2021 is a Monday.
Okay, so is, going back to the 18, I think it's the 18-19 contract, calendar.
Mm-hmm.
December 24th, that's the Monday again?
I would,
So, in other
yes.
words, they would get off.
And that's the example where the calendar will back up.
Right, yeah, I remember all that.
Right.
But December 24th, that would be 23, 22. They get out on the 21st?
I'm sorry, which year? The 21?
No, the 18, 19. So that means they get out on the 21st, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so on the 2021, is it possible, even though it's not a Friday, to move, because the 17th seems like very early to get out of school that year for a break?
Yeah, I think, though, that the amount of time out is not any different than the previous years. The dates are
Right, but I'm
different.
saying you could move that to Monday to go.
Week, are you thinking like Wednesday to?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the issue there is then you
You
shorten
always
the,
want to get out on a Monday?
right, you shorten the winter break, and there's a desire to have
Well, you would just move that.
2 weeks for winter break.
You wouldn't go back on the 3rd, everything would move, so you wouldn't even get out of school on the 26th. That's really early also. I'm just saying, that way you wouldn't have to start on August 9th.
Say that again. I'm not sure what you're suggesting.
Well, so so if you move the start date up, are you going to move it back, so then you'd have more time at the end of the break, right?
Right, you'd go into the next week, which we don't normally do, because we always get off on a Monday to, it's always 2 complete weeks. But I was thinking, for once, we could get off on Monday's December 20th, so 21st, 22nd, get out on the 22nd,
If we,
which would be the Wednesday.
this date though lets us out before Memorial Day weekend, because the last day of school would be the 25th. Is that, I need my glasses?
Yeah.
And then Memorial Day that year isn't until the 30th. So you would, which would be very nice, you'd have Memorial Day weekend before, school would be out before Memorial Day weekend.
Oh, we've gone to school.
No,
I s-
over
in the
Memorial
I
Day
said it would be
weekend.
nice.
We've had graduation on Memorial Day weekend.
in the past, with the calendar, one of the interests of having 2 weeks for the winter break, but then having the weekends. So if doing what you're proposing, Pam, is you cut those weekends out, so it does, you still have the 2 weeks, but you shorten the time off because you don't have the weekends on the two sides
And
of it.
we've never, ever,
And-
ever done that.
Well, and that, I mean, in the
days, and we decided
past,
2 full weeks.
in the past, that was an interest of the committee, so.
Yeah. It's just I remember the days when it kept creeping back into August, towards the beginning of August when we were teaching, and those days were very hot, and it was very early in August.
I would support like 12 days off. You can have 2 full weekends and 2 more days. Just throwing it out there.
If I can throw something out there, I like not going to school in June, so I like this. Since we're throwing things out there, I'll put in my order too.
Well, I remember when Carmel Clay Schools used to go till June 10th.
Oh, that's a bad idea.
We did. And they went after winter break, and they had exams after winter break.
That's so old school, we can't do that.
I'm just saying, there was a time when all that happened.
Yeah, when I was in
I
school.
lived that too. A lot of kids would study over Christmas break.
Yeah.
projects over Christmas break.
And we always said the first couple of days, the first weeks of June were rainy. Really? No. And so what better place to be was school.
I will tell you that the members on this committee, they've spent a lot of time with this. Not just this year, but I mean, some have been on this before, and I remember one person said that last year, I forget the issue now, I think it may have been the winter break, they were trying to go later, and after about 2 hours of conversation, she couldn't come up with a way to meet the other priorities and do, what she wanted, that is to start later. And invariably, that's what happens when you... Yeah. Well, it's not that it's a bad idea. It's just when you have all these priorities and one conflicts with the other, because we want to start later but get out early. We want balanced semesters and want 2 full weeks at Christmas or the winter, and it just doesn't always. They don't all. Some of them conflict with each other.
Layla?
Yep, I've got another question. We frequently get asked about the balanced calendar where you
Yeah.
have a shorter summer, yet we have longer breaks.
Yeah.
I know we did a survey 2 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. Last year?
Yes.
How frequently do we
Last year.
do those surveys in case, the public ask us questions and what have you? Did the committee talk about that?
They did, but as you alluded to, there was a study or a survey last year, so we did not do one again this year. And in all the time that I've been here, as that began to come up about balanced calendars, Carmel so far has just not had interest in it. Now, there are individuals that have a lot of interest in it, but it seems that the majority don't.
Katie?
Can you speak on fall break?
Yes, that was one of the things that came up in this year in the committee, and it started with, why can't we have 5 days off like our neighbors? And after talking through that, if you take 5 days there, then you either have to start school earlier than August the 9th, or you're not going to have balanced semesters. And you can see the first semester is already 6 days shorter than the second. And so if you add 3 days off at fall break, and you don't want to make the differential between the semesters even more than it is now, you would have to start earlier than August the 9th. And so that's a good example, though, that it seems like, well, other districts do it, but other districts, they may not be going 182 days to begin with, or they may be on a balanced calendar.
Thank you. And I apologize if I missed it. I understand that the calendar committee is made up of parents, teachers, and administrators. And when we talk about
Parents.
parents, teachers, and administrators, and they're also from each elementary, middle, and high school.
Correct.
So thank you. And then we are also, at this point, the only discussion is the 2021-2022 calendar year.
Yeah.
And I know that a couple years ago, we decided that we always wanted to have so many years out, as opposed to let all 3 expire and then
Right.
have to do 3 so that our families can plan
Correct.
that far out. So if there's no more questions, we will move on to the next discussion item, which is the first reading of policy 0210, staff ethics. Dr. Dudley.
Yes, thank you. So this policy was revised, and it was also reviewed by our attorneys to look at the staff ethics. And one of the reasons we looked at this is, as you'll recall, we brought a couple months ago for a first reading a social media policy. But after review and taking it back to our attorneys, their suggestion was to not have a separate social media policy, but actually add this to our staff ethics policy. And then I'm going to bring to you 2 other policies that we're going to recommend be deleted and add to administrative guidelines under staff ethics, as we were looking at all 3 of these policies as a whole. And so this policy has some changes in it, but the major changes have to do with the bottom red paragraph pertaining to social media and communicating, and how staff need to communicate as they're representing our district.
Thank you. Questions, Pam?
Didn't we also take this to CTA?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, this was
So-
taken to discussion.
Yeah, so we want to
for
make sure
CTA.
the board.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions? No? Thank you, Dr. Dudley. Next is first reading of policy 0100, communications, cooperation, and support. Again, Dr. Dudley.
Yes. And so this is one of the 2 policies that we are recommending to be deleted, and then the information that is contained in this policy to be attached to administrative guidelines for staff ethics. Because if you look at the policy, this is more just how do we communicate with each other.
Any questions on this policy? No, thank you. Moving on to the next policy, 0231, outside activities of staff.
And again, this one goes with the staff ethics policy, and it's one we're suggesting that it be deleted and that administrative guidelines be included in with the staff ethics policy.
Thank you. Any questions? Nope, we will move on. Again, Dr. Dudley, another first reading of policy. Are we on gifts, grants, and bequests?
Yes.
Policy 7230.
And so this policy, the policy committee reviewed it, and then we also had our attorneys review this. And there's not major changes in here, but the one change that we are suggesting is we make this policy talking about just gifts, because when you think about grants and bequests, they are gifts, and not have the different terms, and our attorneys agreed with that and felt like, yes, gifts was sufficient to have in the policy.
Thank you. Pam?
And we looked this up in the law as well and found out gifts was listed as both grants and bequests. So we figured it was an all-encompassing term.
Thank you. Any other questions? Next on discussion is material rental and fee changes for 2019-2020. Dr. Dudley.
Yes, thank you. And so this is a yearly report that I bring to you for first discussion, and then I'll ask for action in our July meeting. There's some changes in our materials, rental, and fees, and some of these changes are due to price increases. Some are changes to dropping of some consumable materials, and some are changes to the materials that we will adopt, you just adopted, like, for example, in the wellness materials. One thing that I do want to point out is in the performing arts at the middle school, you can see in 7th and 8th grade, it looks like there's new fees. Those are actually not new fees. What those are is we were charging those fees outside of the rental process, like where they would, bring in $5 for your music, bring in this money, and it was charged outside of the rental. And so we really wanted to clean that up. Last year, we cleaned up the 6th grade and put all of the fees within the rental structure. The next step in our 7th and 8th grade is to look at what we are charging for our uniforms and getting those in the rental structure. That is not in the 7th and 8th grade. It is in the 6th grade fees, where they purchase a polo shirt, and it's the same for all 3 schools, and we did that last year. But those are some changes there. So we will continue to work with that. There are lots of different preferences in the 3 different middle schools on what they want their students to wear in orchestra and choir and band, and so we'll continue to work with them and bring that together.
Thank you. Any other questions? Katie?
I really appreciate not having to go find my checkbook for these little $5, $20 things. So thank you for some sanity savings. I appreciate that.
You can write that down. Sanity savings.
Thank you. Next, we will move to reports. The first report is the monthly financial update. Mr. McMichael.
Thank you. So we're through May. You can see we're beginning to get property tax now, almost $3.7 million, and in our education and referendum fund, and also excise tax of about $400,000. So we're ending the month with cash balance about 2.7. That will come up considerably next month in June and July, or June mostly, but so we're pretty much on track where we would expect. I may have shared with you this with you before, but as our referendum gets a little larger, and realizing that we receive that money from property tax, and so basically twice a year, that tends to cause our deficits, or our cash balance, to go down further from January to May. Until we, collect all of that, because we're spending the money mostly on salaries every 2 weeks, and so the expenditures haven't changed, but the cash flow, as that becomes a little bit larger percentage and larger dollar amount, it causes that balance to go down until we receive those collections. So in our operating fund. Same thing. You can see we're in the black now, ending balance of $2.5 million, and then you can kind of compare. It's not exactly the same, but the general fund, the referendum fund from 2018, as compared to the current referendum and education fund, and likewise the operations fund as compared to the previous capital projects, transportation, and bus replacement funds. And then you have the bank reconciliation statement and the detail of the reports, or the summary of the reports. And so that's the financial report for this month.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? Layla?
Yeah, Roger, when we decided, well, we didn't decide, when we voted to shift money into the 2 funds,
Yep.
We were going to look at it quarterly, so we're about our quarterly. To me, it looks like we're on target in that we have transferred an appropriate
Right.
amount to cover our expenses.
Correct.
Into the operation funds. Is that?
Yeah, we're actually transferring it each month. And we're transferring the actual expense. So the money is completely tracking with and following the expense.
Thank you, Roger. Any other questions? No, we will move on to board member reports. First one is Lynn on the NSBA conference that she attended in the spring.
So do I control it? Okay. Yes. Here we go. So thanks, Mike. Today, at today's meeting here, I will be reporting my experience at National School Board Association Annual Conference 2019 in Philadelphia. I attended at the end of March, and this is a conference that presenting a lot of topics related to public education, especially for school board members, superintendent, for topics related to district performance and student achievement. So first of all, I appreciate very much the financial report from the school district for me to attend the meeting. And I know our district always supporting all the board members and then our executives here to attend in order to learn the most recent trends in public education. So thank you very much. And so I'll briefly talk about what sessions are reported, the major topics, and then what my takeaways are, and then related to what our district is doing currently, and then some of my thoughts on what we may consider more in enhancing student achievement. So I attended the programs on 2 days, Saturday and Sunday here. In addition to attending general sessions on both days, I primarily attended the sessions talking about stakeholder engagement and then topics related to mental health. So you can see here sessions I attended on Saturday, and then the next slide here showing you I attended a few of them on mental health on Sunday. So I'll report more about what I heard on those sections. And first of all, about stakeholder engagement and student achievement. The sessions are reported here. All of them support that having active authentic stakeholder engagement is proven to improve student achievement, and which is a required component of the Every Child, Every Student Success Act. And the statement stakeholder engagement is a critical component of that requirement. So when we talk about engagement, very often we only think about parent involvement, such as the communications the school district push out to our parents or to the community, and then parents volunteering at school events and activities. But actually, experts and the scholars about public education, they advocate for deeper, more active and more authentic statement engagement in the form of shared power and collaborating with community. So it's more than that. We frequently, how we perceive the stakeholder engagement. And they listed some examples of stakeholder engagement, and it's a much bigger list, but these are what I think here are more related to our district. They talk about parent classes and where help parents build skills and learn knowledge that will support parents' roles in students' life. So parents here, they interact with students primarily at home, and they also can contribute to students' achievement at school. So you will see family engagement at home, family engagement at school, and some other examples of engagement also include ongoing and a more convenient form of school-family outreach, or say communication. And they also talk about strengthening family and school relationship for especially marginalized students. So there's a much longer list here, but some of them I think they are targeting for maybe other districts. In other words, not all examples or not all strategies are suitable for all districts. So it's not one size fits all. For example, one of the examples discussed at the section is parent social network. It's for parents to advocate for their special needs. So this is a suitable strategy for diversified districts with a wide range of social economical groups. And I think that that may not fit into our district profile. So this is just some of the examples. Some other notes to stakeholder engagement. In order to achieve the real stakeholder engagement, the school district here need the commitment. So for people in power like the school board, superintendent, and other executives at the school district, we need to be committed to authentic engagement, and we should also be willing to empower our stakeholders for them to share power with us. There are some common barriers to engagement. For example, how does the district get access to a wider community, and how do parents or other community members get access to school resources or school communication? And after you have the access, how do you stay connected with them? And for those that want to be truly engaged with student achievement, and where can they obtain the skills and knowledge in order to really do the engagement activities? A useful strategy here would be to partnering with community leaders to bridge the gap and to gain the trust, to build the trust between us and the community. So my takeaways here is, and first of all, when we talk about stakeholder engagement, and I want to thank our PDOs. I will be the high school PDO treasurer next year, and throughout my kids' school life, I truly appreciate PDO as an organization that provide continuous effort, help and the support for teachers and school staff. But beyond that, and we can do more. So, for example, recently our district has Parents Academy on school safety, and we may expand that idea to address other key topics or other hot topics for our school district. We have a signature program, expedition program, where we invite community leaders or active community members to learn more about our school. And this is a great access to local leaders in order to learn more about who are maybe moving into our community and the changes in our community profile. We know we are recently revising the program, so to have a Expedition 2.0 program. So the focus here may be to stay connected after the program. So after they graduate, and then we can actually for them to become advocate for the school district. So the idea here is to let them know about what the school is doing, and for them to like our school more, our district more, and in order to have trust between us. I also recognize that each school may be different. Each school may be already doing a lot of things, engaging parents and beyond. And so I think I may want to hear more about that, how each school is engaging parents and then the greater community in supporting each school's unique environment. And that also means that at a district level, we may want to empower each school and delegate that power to them for them to develop their own programs. So that's the first big topic that I attended various sessions on. The next day, I attended quite a few sessions about mental health and student achievement. Now, it's very interesting that every year you will see more and more sessions provided on student mental health, not just students, even for school staff. And what I see here is that you have vendors presenting their most advanced products. You even have health professionals that giving you most updated research and their thoughts, and they're eager to collaborate with school districts to help students cope with their mental health issues. So the couple of sessions I attended on mental health are both hosted by health professionals, including one of the world-renowned professors from Harvard Medical School. And they presented alarming data about mental disorder in the entire society, from early childhood to adulthood. And they advocate for all schools to become therapeutic schools. And that means that we need to take a whole school approach to coordinate all activities related to student mental health. They recommend having an identified and trained staff member at each school to coordinate that program to carry out the whole school approach. And this requires all staff from top of the school district down to every level at the school level to have a team approach to collaborate together in order to address students' issues. So it's also very interesting that since a lot of sessions here are taught by health professionals, and they actually gave specific suggestions for how to address mental health, like strategies or say therapies. So some of the interesting topics I heard here, including validating responses. So when a teenager or student is complaining or are talking about their mental health issues, and you will listen, acknowledge their feelings, their emotions, understand why they feel that way, try to normalize their education first before you extend that and using your own vocabulary to achieve your goal. They say the behavioral principle in psychology is to have extinction. So you will decrease the probability of the response as a result of non-reinforcement. They talk about different types of behavioral principle, like you will punish, so people will not do that again, and you do something else. So this is what they advocate for, extinction. Another interesting thing is that the Harvard professor talk about dialectical view, and they addressing that change is the nature of life. So what you think is true, what the students think is true, and what you see is also true, and therefore the opposite of the truth is also a truth. It's not like they are wrong, you are always right. You need to recognize that they also have different perspectives on certain issues. So I found that very interesting. I also attended another section about resilience, and the strategies discussed there is also helpful for me, useful for me personally. Let me see, next one here. I also attended a section talking about how university researchers using artificial intelligence to contextually analyze students' social media accounts to prevent school shootings and crime. So it's after a shooting happened, and they analyze the data and find out you can actually, using AI to analyze that statements on the social media account to predict the probability, the chance of school shooting. And they say this is a very promising area for future development. So my takeaway here is, and certainly school safety is more important than ever before, this is also a multi-facet issue. It's not just about physical security, how we secure our doors, preventing goods from stolen or preventing people from attacking active shooters. We also need to address mental health. We will need community to engage in the whole process, and then incorporating the latest advantage technology here in addressing school issues. And I would like to see more. I know we've been doing a lot, like Parent Academy. We hire the director about our school safety. We have the mental health director, and I truly think that given the importance, the urgence of school safety and student mental health issues, we will need more safety initiatives. And I know there's a new state bill here that will become effective in July 1st, which creates a school safety referendum tax levy. I'm very intrigued to learn more about it and see how it may help our district address some of the pressing issues. So overall, I find the time I spend at NSBA 2019 is very rewarding. And each year, I've got new ideas and learning about how important my position is in advocating for public education and what I can do here to benefit our district. So I'm very happy to report my learning from the conference this year.
Well, thank you, Lynn, for the comprehensive report. Thank you for attending. For all of us, we've all had the ability, the honor, and the privilege to attend, and have found it a very meaningful and helpful event. Unfortunately for scheduling, they seem to like to schedule our spring break, but we will continue to go because it is a great opportunity for us as board members to learn more. Does anybody have any questions for that report? Katie?
I just have two comments. The first one is next year I believe is in Chicago. so that's quite convenient. The second one is, if you scroll back, there was a point that I just wanted to make a comment on where you talked about individual schools. Page 8, probably. I just want to kind of a comment is that's one of the reasons why, it sounds maybe small, but why one of the reasons we chose to move to Carmel. I came from a very large school district where every school was exactly the same, all the way down to like what Valentine's Day parties they would have, is they'd be identical in every single school. And I love the fact that we have elementary schools in particular that are different. And they have different students and different teachers, and I love the fact that we embrace that, and I just kind of want to do a little shout out to there that's one of the things as a parent I love, and I even saw that as an outsider, that we embrace that each school is different, and they can, obviously they have the same goals and stuff, but I love that we embrace that, so I just want to make a comment on that. Yeah.
Thank you. Layla?
On page 8, so we were talking about the whole school approach, and the identify and training staff members at each school. So with this therapeutic school, did they give any specific suggestions on what training the staff members should have?
I don't think they gave in detailed information in the short, like a 2-hour session, because
Okay.
a lot of topics were crammed into that session.
Okay. Thank you.
That's the higher level what they talk about the whole school approach.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next on the agenda, we have another board member report, Lynn, on Carmel Clay Parks.
Right, so last 2 slides here are about updates from the Parks Board. And of course, it's summer, so the Mona Water Park is open, and I hope that it gets warmer, so our school families will enjoy more at Water Park. The other 2 updates here, first of all, there's a newly renovated and updated playground here already in place at Inlow Park, which is east, just a short distance east from here. It's lovely. Updated the playground facilities here, as you can see the picture. And on the west side, the West Park got a new pavilion and a new playground. And later it's going to be named for one of the big donors of the West Park. Right now, the pavilion is already open, and the park is offering some of the summer camps at that building. So that's my report from the Parks Board.
Thank you. Any questions on the Parks Board report? No. Thank you for representing us on the Parks Board and for giving us that update. We have another item that we're going to sneak in. I understand that Layla has an item that she'd like to make a quick report on.
I would, and it's actually a very exciting report. Being on the board for Special Olympics of Indiana, I was invited to this year's first annual Champions Together Awards Luncheon. And at the awards luncheon, all the schools who've received banners for participation in Champions Together with their unified sports teams were recognized. And I just wanted to throw out a number of different recognitions that our Carmel High School students and administrators had received. So since the inception of Champions Together, which is a relationship between IHSAA and Special Olympics of Indiana, we have unified sports. This started 6 years ago with Bobby Cox and Lee Lonzo and Mike Furnish. These individuals brought this program together. We have been, Carmel High School has been participating since the inception 6 years ago. We have also, every year that they add an additional sport, we have a sport. So we have bocce ball and basketball, started with track. We've got flag football and bowling. One huge first award, the Spirit of Unified 2019 Administrator Award, that went to Bruce Wolf, our Assistant Athletic Director at CHS. So that was very, very exciting. Our high school students, and I will add that the unified sports, this is all run by high school students. There's 4 different levels of criteria to be included to be Banner Award winners, and we've been a Banner Award winner for 6 consecutive years. And we were also recognized as Special Olympics of Indiana 50th Anniversary Gold Banner winners. So kudos to our students in this inclusive revolution that we embrace everybody's differences and enjoy life together. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Well, thank you for sharing that exciting information. And next on the agenda, we have the superintendent's report. Dr. Beresford.
Well, first, let me just say thank you for those 2 reports. First off, Lynn, the information you got is just spot on with the direction that we want to go in our district. And from stakeholder involvement to putting in layers and layers of school safety, things, especially focusing on mental health. So I really appreciate that's kind of very. I find that as a confirmation that we're going in the right direction and trying to engage our community as much as we can in the decision making process and that sort of thing. And secondly, thank you, Layla, for bringing that out. I had just talked to Bruce Wolf just a few weeks ago about. Mr. Inskeep said that he has been flying that flag for a long time and how special that is, a special part of Carmel High School athletics. And you can also see it spilled over into performing arts, and it's part of the culture of Carmel High School, and it's pretty special. So thank you for bringing that up, too. I've just got a list of a few exceptional things. First one, we were notified this in the last couple of weeks or so that Emily Spidell, who I know is number 2, was named the Indiana Gatorade Player of the Year for Indiana. So her accolades continue, and so real proud of Emily. And her mom is actually a science teacher at Carmel Clay, or at Clay Middle School. And so that family's a pretty special family to our family here at Carmel Clay. So congratulations to number 2. And we already heard about the boys' golf team and the trifecta, but I wanted to just share that I actually went out and caught the last 9 holes of that tournament, and I followed around Nick Dentino, and what an amazing young man he is. And the point I wanted to point out about that was Nick was leading the state championship, and the back 9 at that golf course was really tough. And the guy he was playing against, who was his number 1 contender, was playing very well. And it went from a 4-stroke lead to a 3-stroke lead to a 2-stroke lead. And then on the last hole, where he had 1-stroke lead, he chose to lay up and with him and his coach because they wanted to secure the team championship. And so the result of that was the other kid got a birdie, and it tied the state championship. So, and you can imagine how mentally tough you have to be to have a lead and have it go away and get tied and then go back. And the second time they both drove to about the same position, and this time instead of laying up, Nick took out his 3-wood and put it in the heart of the green, and got a birdie to win the state championship. So it was pretty special, and he's just a neat kid. And to win the trifecta, to be the individual state champion, to be on the state championship team, and then to be chosen for the Mental Attitude Award was pretty amazing. And the whole team is very tight, and the coaching staff there, Josh Shelton, along with Chard Reed, and the people we met tonight, they're just a neat group. So it was really a lot of fun. To watch our kids do that under that much pressure, and just to stay so steady. They just have a sense of calm about them that I wish I had. So it was amazing. Also, I'd point out that we had 54 students go along with administrators and teachers and traveled overseas to France to learn about the culture and language and rich history there. And they experienced a lot of incredible things. One was attending the Women's World Cup soccer game, and amazingly, our high school principal, assistant principal, and another individual ended up on national television, and then people were posting pictures of them going because the United States had scored. So that was pretty interesting to see our people there. One of the, we saw the Eiffel Tower and a lot of things that in Paris, but probably the most meaningful thing in talking to Dr. Harmis and some of the people who attend was they were able to be in Normandy, and the Normandy American Cemetery, and they were there on the 7th, and so there were veterans who were there that they got to speak to who actually were in the war and on that beach. So how what an amazing experience for our kids to experience that. So it's really neat. I also want to throw out a congratulations to our steely-eyed speller, Ria Koya. She's Orchard Park's 5th grader who was in the National Spelling Bee competition in Washington, D.C. And they took 50 finalists to compete, at the very end of the tournament, and she placed 51st. So she was this close to being in that top 50. So we're very proud of her and her efforts, and I just really appreciate steely-eyed spellers that can do that kind of. The amount of work it takes to get to that level is just incredible. So she's a special kid. I want to do a reminder that we'd like to get our feedback from our parents and staff about the Time of Day project. And we put out the informational video, a lot of frequently asked questions. We put out some research. We got a lot of information there for people to look at. And but we will be closing that down here on the 26th. So just a couple more days left to get feedback. We've got hundreds upon hundreds of people that have weighed in on that, so we'll be looking at all that, crunching that data, and we'll be reporting that to you as soon as we get it all sorted out as we move forward in the decision-making process for those two important topics that we're looking at. And just as a reminder, what that is the idea of starting the high school and middle school students an hour later, and then also the possibility of extending the elementary school day 30 minutes, and then expanding our late start, twice a month late start days to the middle school and elementary school. So feedback on the 26th. And then finally, I've got two bell ringers. One is that, so we're on the topic of athletics, and this is a pretty, we celebrate a lot of athletics tonight. The boys golf team, when they won the state championship, that was the 150th Indiana State Athletic Association's in the world of state champions, 150 state championships for Carmel High School. And that's just a phenomenal number, and there's no other school district anywhere close to that. I think our first state championship was by the golf team in like the 60s. That's when this was a kind of a little small country, district, and it was starting to grow. And so 150 of those. And then Nick, in winning the Mental Attitude Award winner, was the 57th student that we've had who has won the Mental Attitude Award. And for this year in particular, Bo Robbins won the Mental Attitude Award winner for football. And then John Michael Malloy won the Mental Attitude Award for boys basketball, and then Nick Dentino won that. And in my world, I've seen a lot of wins and losses, but there's something really special about these students that win the Mental Attitude Award, because they're nominated by their school and by their, and it's just a pretty special and amazing feat. So congratulations to the athletic department and all the coaches, and that's a big marker, I think, in athletic history there at Carmel High School. Then my second bell ringer, because this is the first time I've had two, but today marks an incredible day in history in that 30 years ago in St. Louis, Missouri, our very own Colleen Nobis over there tied the knot with Steve Nobis and was married on this very day 30 years ago. And she's choosing to celebrate here at the board meeting. But even more remarkable that also on this day 30 years ago, on the west side of Indianapolis, your superintendent tied the knot with Lori Beresford and shot way over my head, and she said yes. And so now she has to live with the decision she made. But anyhow, so two 30-year anniversaries are on this date 30 years ago, and I just thought we should point out that great day in history. So anyhow, congratulations to the Nobuses, and maybe we'll have some cake or something when I get home tonight.
Well, thank you, Dr. Beresford, for that report, and of course, congratulations to both of you, and having accepting spouses that are allowing you to be here this evening. Hopefully, you celebrated Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and tomorrow. Do we have any questions or comments on the report? No? Thank you. So the last item on the agenda is announcements. Wednesday, we have the Board Advance, formerly known as the Board Retreat. Then July 4th, our offices are closed for 4th of July holiday. July 10th, we have an executive session about another student safety program that we are starting and looking into. July 22nd is the school board regular session, and not to rush it, but August 12th is teacher contract day, and August 13th is student first day of school, followed by August 14th will be our school board workshop session. So for all you students and teachers out there, still enjoy the rest of your summer, even though we're counting down the days. And with that, I will accept the motion to adjourn. A second? Second. Thank you. Meeting adjourned.